Dear students, in this lecture I will teach you about Python list. A list is a collection which is ordered and changeable. In Python, lists are written with square brackets. Now consider an example. Suppose we want to create a list and the name of the list is X. Suppose it has 3 elements 1, 2 and 3. So in Python this creates a list and the name of the list variable here is X and it has 3 elements 1, 2 and 3. And if you want to know the type of the variable X, then you can use the type function. So here you can see the type X returns list. Therefore X is a list. Suppose you want to create another list and here the elements of the list are string. So to declare a string you can either use single quote or double quote. Here I am using double quote. Suppose Y is a list in Python. It has 3 elements and all the 3 elements are strings. The first string is suppose A, the second string is B and the third string is C. So this also creates a list in Python having 3 strings A, B and C. And again, if you want to know the type of the variable Y, you can use the type function and it obviously shows you list. One of the interesting feature of Python list is that Python list can have any number of items and they may be of different types. Now consider this example. Suppose you create a list, say my list. So this is the name of the list variable that you want to create and it contains an integer number, say 1, a string, say A and a float, suppose 3.5. So this is also a list in Python containing different data types. One is here integer, then a string A and then a float 3.5. And if you want to know the type of this variable my list, then you can see it gives you list. So my list is a list. So this is the important feature in Python list. In Python list you can save or you can store different data types. Another important feature in Python list, a list can also have another list as an item. This is called a nested list. Consider an example. Suppose you want to create a nested list and the name of the variable is mylist1. Now it contains suppose a string B, an integer number 1, a float 3.5 and another list. And whenever you want to declare a list you need to use square brackets. So here I am using square brackets within the mylist1 to declare another list. And suppose this list contain the elements 3, 4 and 5. So this create a nested list. And if you want to know the type of the variable list1, then you can see it gives you list. So my list1 is a nested list. Now we discuss about list index. So what is list index? Whenever you want to access some of the elements from a list, then you need to use the list indices. For example, we have a list X having 5 elements 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And if you want to know the elements that is there in the list X, then you just need to write down X in Jupyter notebook or in Python console you need to write down print X. In Jupyter notebook you can simply write X to know all the elements present in the list X. So here you can see it gives you 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now suppose you want to access the first element in the list. So to access the first element in the list you need to use the index of the first element, and the index of the first element in Python is always 0. So you need to keep in your mind that in Python list indices starts with 0. Now if you want to access the third element of the list X, then you need to write down X within square bracket 2 Because the third element in the list has the index 2. Because index in Python list starts with 0. Hence, the first element here in this example 1 having the index 0, the second element having the index 1, and the third element 3 in the list X having the index 2. Now I will discuss about another important feature of Python list, that is known as negative indexing. Negative indexing means beginning from the end. -1 refers to the last element and -2 refers to the second last element. Consider an example. Suppose X is a list having 5 elements 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Now if you want to access the last element, you can easily access it using the index -1. So X -1 written within square bracket indicates the last element in the list X, and here the last element in the list X is 5. So obviously X -1 within the square brackets gives you 5. Now if you want to access the second last element, that is 4, for that you need to use the negative index -2 for the second last element 4. So X -2 within the square brackets gives you 4, that is the second last element of the list X. Now suppose instead of only one element you want to access few consecutive elements. Suppose from the second element 2 you want to access up to the fourth element 4 from the list X. For that you can use range of indices in Python list. So for that you need to write down the list indices like this. You need to start with the index of the starting element, and here the starting element is 2 and it has the index 1, because in Python index starts with 0. So you need to mention here the starting element of the index, and here the index is 1. Then you need to mention a colon, and you want to get the elements up to 4, and this element has the index 3. So for that you need to write down 4. Keep in your mind that whenever you are using this kind of range indices notation in Python, always the element that you will get from this type of indices, it will always exclude 1 from the right. So that means if you want to get the index of this element 4, and that is 3 here, you need to write 4 here. And another important thing you always need to keep in your mind that when specifying a range of indices like here 1:4, the return value will be a new list with the specified items. So the output that you are getting, that is also a list, and if you want then you can store this new list into another variable. For example, if you write like this y equal to x under square brackets 1:4, then it will create a new list variable y, and if you want to know the elements of y, then it will give you 2, 3 and 4. Now suppose you want to get all the elements starting from 2 and up to the end. For that you can simply write the starting index, that is the index of the element 2, and that is 1, and then put a colon, and you don't need to mention the index of the last element, and it gives you all the elements starting with the index 1 and up to the end. Now suppose there is a list X having the elements 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and you want to change one of the element of it, because in Python the elements or the items in a list can be changed. Therefore in Python lists are mutable. Now suppose you want to change the third element which has the index 2, and you want to change it to 10, and if you want to check the modified values in the list X, then you can do this. So here you can see that the third element 3 is changed to a new element 10 here. This is not the end of this video lecture. The link of the second part of this lecture is given in the description of this video. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe the channel, like the video and share.